Hunter Tate, I see your question. That's a good one. So let's go to the proper screen, eh? Let's go to the Finances tab right here. So what you end up with on the expenses side of the equation is Army upkeep and Navy upkeep, your government buildings and supply depots that are all going to cost you the most money. And there are a variety of different mechanisms in the game to help keep government money coming, or money coming into the government's coffers, in order to make sure that you're not running too big of a negative balance. But what you're going to have happen is you in game here will be building units, new brigades, you'll be building new fleets, you'll be building new ships, you'll be building new buildings. And what you'll notice, and this is the thing to keep an eye out for, is that credit rating. When this credit rating starts going down from AAA to AA to single A, and then down into triple B, double B, B, and on down and down and down, that's when you know that the ability for everybody out there who has loaned the government you money to afford all of the things that you're building no longer has confidence in the loans that they've already given you, number one, and the loans that they would ever give you in the future, which means that they probably won't loan you any more money at all. So what happens in game is once you reach single B minus or less or worse, then Congress implements law measures that prevent you from building anything more. So I guess to try and answer your question as directly as possible, you're using policy timed right, you're using projects timed right, and you're making sure not to overbuild at any point and keep enough financial stability and ground underneath you to continue the war effort. And so you're kind of just doing one thing at a time. And I'll go back to policies. What you get into to start with the war is your tariff funding, which has been a really important one for me, right? Tariffs at 28% have made up, I don't even know what that would be. That's 78 to 85% of my government revenue, really. And then sales taxes. I went ahead and I slid sales taxes to 5% pretty much from the middle of 1861 on. I think I tried to go with lower sales taxes earlier. But tariffs I brought down initially because it was starting to worry me how much it was costing my companies in the country to produce all of their stuff because of the tariff, same as now. But it wasn't having the ability, the fact that those companies were a little bit underwater in terms of profitability can be offset when you subsidize economic measures at a high level to then come over here to your projects and start handling some economic measures that really help to keep this credit rating from crashing. You pass economic measures, you pass economic policies, again, in-game, in a well-timed manner. You prevent overbuilding at any point, and you can essentially keep that credit rating high enough to where you can go ahead and lean into building a little more, taking on more debt, and that credit rating will stay relatively high, But then the other thing you got to watch out for is in your economic report that comes up every month. You want to try to read that, and you want to try to see what the economy looks like. Are you getting more import volume than export volume? Okay? Or are you getting more export volume than import volume? That's kind of what you would prefer to have. If your trade deficit is large, then that's not great for your economy. Okay, average corporate production, I've seen it go into the billions, and frankly, that's a good thing. You want that to be higher. You don't like to have that there was zero buildings constructed. You don't, as the government entity, you don't have to buy and build all of the buildings in the game in order for the country to benefit. There is a mechanism, as I understand it, for private interests, to developers to come in and just start building stuff on their own. And then the credit rating, again, I can't say enough about. Let's see what you said here. Let's say you get to B minus. How do you get out of it? Dissolve some units, delete a depot? Yeah, you got to cut costs. You got to start by cutting costs, and then you've got to take some of these measures. Number one, you got to start working on getting, whatever you haven't done in the government funding area, do it immediately. You need to get your economic subsidies as high as you can get them. Part of what happens is you're able to use some of these government funding measures in order to help do that. So funding policies permit legislation that could result in new sources of income to finance the war effort. The maximum amount of annual economy subsidies increase. So when you push forward this policy, government funding 1, government funding 2, 3 and on down, so it looks like 3 is where it stops, that essentially, you go back over to the finances screen, makes it so that the maximum amount of subsidy you can send out for economic purposes and for economic projects goes way up. And when you start getting into these economic projects, that's where you start rescuing your credit rating bit by bit. For instance, this one right here, which I'm about ready to do, because I'm in double B plus now, and I'm going to try to increase my credit rating by. And it's kind of like a nebulous thing that they talk about right here, but it says finance economic reforms that will directly influence the nation's credit rating. So that's what the policymakers and the politicians all get busy with. They, if you wanted to imagine it from a role-playing sense, all the folks in the halls of power who've got their connections in New York and their connections in Chicago and in St. Louis, they've got their business friends and folks that they rub shoulders and elbows with at dinner parties, and they go and they talk more about all the different things that the government's going to be doing to help spur growth and that they should absolutely invest, and here is why. Like, all of those things start to happen more and more and more, and there's more excitement about, oh, somebody's got a development idea for, the World's Fair. Obviously that's not historically correct, but something like that. Finance economic reforms that will directly influence the nation's credit rating. A credit rating is an evaluation of the credit risk of a prospective debtor. So you understand the idea about credit as they explain from there. Each level of this project will further increase the national credit rating with one step. But it takes a ton of subsidy funding, 10 million. You could probably do it once or twice a year. And so you level that up each time, and you can artificially move your credit rating up. And I would say that's the quick fix. That's what I'm about ready to do myself. Thankfully, I haven't hit B minus yet. But there's other things you can do, like the subsidization of banks, anything in this economic category, just about anything that boosts the economy. For me in my game, there is a big push by me to lean a little bit away from industry and more leaning into agriculture. And so my economy benefits if agriculture is strong. And so the subsidization of a variety of different agriculture projects is what helps me boost the production output of my farming sector, of my agricultural sector, which thereby helps to boost the government's credit rating, because when those agriculture operations are thriving, they're paying a little bit more in taxes and all the rest. How do the project's spend points appear? Looks like you can only choose a few. Can you research more than one at a time? Yeah, you click this button and it, boom, does it. Now, it takes a little bit of time for the effects to actually impact your game. You know, they roll out over time. You click on it to find out more about it, to learn about what's behind it. You click on this to do it, and as much subsidy funding as you have available for industry, and it's, you know, you find that, right? So my industry is set at medium. Okay, and I have, how much subsidy funding do I have? Industry subsidy funding currently funded at 4.4 million. Now that's 4.4 million, I think, per year. I think that's right. So then you go back over to projects. Subsidy funding for infrastructure reform. Funding of 4.3 million is necessary in order to do it, and we have 4.4. We have all the money we need. So it builds up bit by bit based, excuse me, on the level of subsidy that you set here. And what I'll say is there may be some out there, gamers, who would tell you that the subsidy funding, as you can see over here in my expense report, subsidies only makes up 81 million of my spending. And subsidies really would only make up a small percentage of your spending in any case. However, if you get into a tight spot with your credit rating already being real low, spending more money is something that you really shouldn't do. But what I would say is you pour everything that you can in your game into the economic slider, and then you start working on ticking off your subsidy fund or your economic subsidy funded projects in here and leveling them up. You get rid of depots, you get rid of buildings, you delete some units, you delete some fleets. You basically bring your balance sheet back to something that is, I think, closer to maybe in the hole by 100 million, 200 million, I bet. And I think that would bounce you back that much quicker. And you may backtrack in the war effort by a good bit because of all of these things that you have to change. But I think you kind of start with that, and then the quick fix one is like definitely go for improved credit rating. Boom, 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 every chance you get, and just get that thing back up there. And then that gives you the ability to keep more of the troops that you want to keep. So I would probably go for that first before you start just deleting a bunch of units and deleting a bunch of things. Try to go for this, delete what you need to, and then start hammering away at the government funding policies. I would say do tariffs. I would say print, and print doesn't matter. That's going to affect the wealth of your citizens considerably. But I would go print, boom, boom. I might even think about doing confiscation. I might even think about doing income taxes right away. All of those measures help bring money into the government, help it pay off its loans. So that's kind of the hard and fast advice I would have about all that. By the way, mark that ended right about at 49 minutes. More like 55 in the recording. Okay. So I'm going to remember that for a video topic. Thanks again for watching, guys. And remember, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more alternate history gaming. I'm Bank60s. We'll see you on the next one.